Our first presenter is Nadine Bailey. Nadine has been working on watershed level issues for 3 decades. With a background in logging, she also became an advocate for fish, thanks to the passion for fishing shared by both her father and husband. She now works for Family Water Alliance in Colusa, where she advocates for private property and water rights for farmers and manages the Sacramento Valley Fish Screen Program. She and her husband live in Anderson, California. Please join me in welcoming Nadine Bailey. Oh, perfect. Do you and your stuff?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, so if you'll look at the slides.
So a lot of what I've been doing the last few years is reflecting about how we got here. And last night I was thinking, because our table is full of PhDs and a lot of people with different letters behind their name, how did I get here? Because I don't have any of those things. I'm not a scientist. I was a housewife from Hayfork that got involved, and when the northern spotted owl got listed, and kind of ended up jumping on a slide and going down it. And so this morning, I just want to talk about the people that along my very interesting life, because as I was driving here, and I'll try not to cry, but I came here as a very young, I'm going to say 15 3/4 year old young woman who got married then, and we moved to a cabin on the Salmon River up White's Gulch it had running water, but it didn't have plumbing. So coming through the Scott Valley and seeing the snow on the mountains just made me think about a lot of things about how quickly life passes us by, and the things that we learn along the way. And I have been so fortunate because along the way, I have met some people that have put boots on the ground and decided to plant themselves in their watershed and make a difference. And because of that, that's why I'm here today, is because of those people. And I call them the heroes of my life. I am. And I don't, what do I have, 20 minutes? Is there a timer? Like, give me a, yeah, okay, so 10 minutes or?
You have 15 minutes.
15 minutes total, so I'm gonna hurry through. So we came up to the Salmon River, and my husband was a logger. We worked up there, and I learned a lot of things. Like, I learned one day that, we didn't have, Sawyer's Bar didn't have a very big grocery store. So I got on my motorcycle, my 175 Yamaha, and said, I'm gonna just run over to the store in Callahan, up the White's Gulch, over the mountain, down the other side, and go to Callahan and get some ingredients for this recipe I wanted to make. So I learned about grace and God that day, because I got to Callahan, got my groceries, got all the way back, and started home and took the wrong road and ended up going not back to White's Gulch, but the road before it, and ended up, and I'm up there and I'm looking, I'm going, well, I don't remember this view from this. So turned around, and when I coasted down the hill into White's Gulch, I coasted because I didn't have any gas left. Now, remember, this is before the days of cell phones and all of those things. So I learned a lot there. We went down the river, and as the jobs decreased, we ended up in Orleans. We lived with Vine Leonard Super on the Salmon River, and Clarence White, who was a timber faller, met my husband and said, come stay with us. So we stayed there. We lived in Orleans, and we migrated through the Klamath River. And in all those people, during those people, I was there, those times I was there with Choo Kilman when he was born, and his baby shower. And those people taught me about the river, about the fisheries, about how important it was. It was at a basket weaving class at the Orleans school, where one of my teachers said, can you smell that? And I said, what? And she goes, I think the eels are gonna run. I can smell the air has changed and I think the eels are gonna run. And she made me understand that eels may not be important to us, but for some people, they are Thanksgiving and Christmas all rolled up in together. And that's how I got here, is because of people like that. Then we would go back over to Hayfork, where I'm from, because the work started to decline on the Salmon and Klamath rivers. And we would end up there when they decided to list the northern spotted owl. And I would be embroiled in that controversy for decades. And I would meet some incredible people, and one of them was Jack Shipley. Jack Shipley was part of the Applegate Partnership with Bud Croman up in Oregon. And Jack taught me about there is no them, there's only us. And he brought people together and made me think about watersheds and communities and how to get people together. And I'm getting to that point. So when I took this job for Family Water Alliance, it was a long road through that to that place. But I remember sitting there with the board interviewing me and realizing as I interviewed, I think I found a good place, because the guy interviewing me had cow poop on his boots. And so I thought, maybe this will be a board that understands what I'm trying to do. So I stumbled into Family Water Alliance, who has 35 years of protecting fish. In addition to being Family Water Alliance, they are the Sacramento Valley Fish Screen Program. They designed fish screens, they built them, they put in 43 at a time when people told the 3 women that started Family Water Alliance, you're going to kill the farming industry by trying to protect these fish. But they didn't. What they did is they saved the fish, they built an industry, and now we're trying to do that same thing up on the Klamath Basin for those farmers up there. We're going to try to duplicate the Sacramento Valley Fish Screen Program in the Klamath. So several years ago, when I took this job in 2014, I started looking at the upper watershed and the fact that the water-based community was not talking about the upper watershed. And my concern was the increasing amount of fire, and not just fire, but high intensity fire that was sending tons of sediment into some of the reservoirs, Oroville and Shasta and Trinity Lakes. And I was concerned about that. So we started doing some upper watershed talks and looking at those impacts of fire on the landscape for just the fisheries program. In addition to that, in addition to what we were doing with the fish screens. So then Danielle Lindler from Jefferson Forest Products approached us and said, would you be willing to partner with us? We'd like to get a CAL FIRE grant, but we can't do it because we're a nonprofit. So when I went to the board and said, hey, I think we should do some logging, they said, oh, so upper watershed work, that's great. That's right in our wheelhouse. So we'll do that. So that's how a private property rights farming water advocacy group ended up with a CAL FIRE grant to thin and make the city of Weed more fire safe. I don't have maps with me, but I can send you the maps of the project, and we're going to be working over there, and we're going to do tours. So I will reach out to you guys when we start the work. We're going to start with tours. We're going to do tours as we do it midway through and when we finish, because we think it's so important for people to understand that it's not just the temperature change, it's a change in the amount of fuel that is out in the forest. And if we don't do something with the fuel levels, whether that is prescribed fire, mechanical thinning, logging, the L word, we have to do something to reduce the stems per acre. My father used to ride a horse from Reading to Eureka under the canopy of trees. Anybody think you could do that today? You couldn't go 10 feet. So the nature of our forests have changed. But what I want to end my talk with today is the nature of the heroes that are out there, the Troy Fletchers, the Nat Binghams, the people that decided not to fight, but to sit down with their neighbors. And people like Michael Belchek, who gave a speech to a bunch of fisheries people in Weaverville the other night. And I know I shocked him because after he was done, I threw my arms around him and I said, I love you. And that's probably the first time that's happened. So Michael Belchek told everybody in that room, I know you're celebrating dam removal and it's all about fish, fish, fish. But I want you to understand that there are people on the Klamath River that have lost their culture of their lake and it's gone. And now they can't fish with their grandchildren like they used to do. And they're grieving. So please be respectful of that. There are people that are missing, are going to have to restructure their whole farm to be able to meet the demands of the fish that will come there. So do not celebrate at the expense of the loss of someone else. And that's the thing that I think is most important. If you want to succeed in saving your watershed, it's not running to Sacramento with a bill that gets your way 100%. It's sitting down with your neighbor and figuring out a solution and trying to work through that solution. And will it take longer? Yes, it will. But we as people have to look at each other, sit down and eat. That's why I drove to Etna last night, 2 extra hours in a hotel room, which I hate anymore these days. But I want us to remember that if you are the Scott Valley watershed, it's more than just a watershed. It's people, it's neighbors. And sit down together and talk to people and find out who they really are. Because Jack Shipley's quote about there are no them is even more true today. And I told a friend of mine who is politically opposite, I called him and said, how are you doing? He goes, how do you think I'm doing? I'm a Democrat. How do you think I'm doing? And he just goes on this rant. And I said, it's going to be all right. Just remember that you're my neighbor and I still love you and you still love me. So don't forget that as you're doing the resource work, that it's about who your neighbor is and about getting together and about finding solutions that work for everyone. And as Michael Belchek said, think about what happens if we don't have farming in some of these valleys, how it will look. And it won't be replaced with, we won't go back to pre-Columbian settlement. We will go back to little ranchettes like the Sierras have. So we have an excellent opportunity in the Scott Valley, and that's why I've been coming over here to help work. And I would have driven just for the eggs alone. I gotta tell you, that's genius. Everybody at my house is going to be happy. So anyway, just my Family Water Alliance has a lot of videos about fish screens. We have hired a videographer. We will be going over the project at Weed with video, and we will be posting those. So if you can't come on the tour, you'll get to see what we're doing. And you're all invited to come and see that forest management can be a good thing. It can make us safe, and we need to all work together to do that. And more importantly, we're not one of my heroes, one more. I read a book called Caravans by James Michener when I was in 8th grade. And it's about Afghanistan. And Afghanistan had forests. And then they overlogged them. And then they let goats go. And so then they lost their topsoil. And I remember reading that thinking, how could people do that? How could people lose their soil? And we're doing that right now. If you look at some of the fires that we had and the events The single biggest threat to our fisheries is high intensity fire, and we have to stop doing that. So hopefully you'll join with me as we continue my fight. My Facebook page for fire is the Carbon Sequestration Gang, and I'm sorry, Forest Service employees, it is a little bad. So, thank you.
You mind?
Yeah, Nadine, I've known you since I got started in this stuff, I think, 25 years ago. And I know your connections with tribal folks and, worked with your husband cutting logs and all of that stuff. And I've worked with tribal people for the county and in this mess too. And I spoke at Troy Fletcher's funeral in Clem. Even though I disagreed with him, obviously, on a lot of things relative to the dams, but he was an honorable man.
Yeah.
And he was a good guy. So my question is with your experience with this and my experience with this, there's people like Troy, there's people like Belcheck, there's other people that are sincere, and everybody on all sides operating on faith. With your experience, what do we do with those in this game that aren't, that have other agendas that seem like that we're at war, that there's a them? I know on my particular side of the equation how to deal with these people, but from the tribal side or from the other side, the more extreme environmental side, how do you winnow through that challenge? Because you're right there in the middle too.
So my other hobby is running political campaigns. And I'll tell you my advice. I ran Heather Hadwick's campaign. She's now your assemblywoman for this district. She's awesome. She's a farmer from Modoc County that raises Highland cows. So run your race. That's my advice to my candidates. Don't look around. You guys decide what your goal is and run your race, and don't look to the side. Don't get distracted by the people that want to stop things, because you can succeed. Look at all of these projects. Look at Farmer's Ditch. I mean, there are some amazing things happening here. The dam removal stuff, the fact that we're coming together now, the ag community up in the basin, to put in fish screens, to save fish, to keep fish out of irrigation things. There's so many good things happening. Just don't look at it. Just run your race and know where you're going. And we know where we're going. And that's a healthy forest, a healthy community, a healthy fisheries, and a healthy economy. And I believe we can get back there.
You running for governor?
Thank you so much, Nadine.
Yes.